My guest today is my friend Dan Churchill, chef, hybrid athlete, author, restaurateur. We talk about process versus goals and ask the age-old question, when is enough enough?
CrossFit, you heard of CrossFit? So CrossFit's technically a hybrid sport. They've got this thing called high rocks. Have you heard of high rocks?
So I just heard of that word.
Yeah, so it's
I heard of the word because I think your website.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. Checks out. Yes, like I'm doing a lot of this high rocks has become the fastest growing sport in the world. You essentially run a kilometer, then you do an exercise, and it's 8 rounds of that. So you do like
Run a kilometer and exercise in 8 rounds of, okay.
Yeah, so the exercise is, 1,000 ski erg, ski ergs?
Yeah.
So 1,000 meter ski erg, then you do another run. Then you do push a sled that's a certain weight, and then you run. Then you pull the sled, and you'll run. And then you do like burpee broad jumps, 1,000 meter run. Essentially, it's become a really big phenom. And that has been really big it's been huge commercially because a lot of footwear brands have seen the opportunity to really get new sales out of footwear, not just in the running community, but the hybrid community. And so because I'm a hybrid athlete, that brought me on to really help support the channel.
What was define hybrid athlete again?
So
we didn't get into that.
Well, hybrid is honestly, hybrids have been around for a long, long time. To train hybrid or hybrid training or hybrid athlete is someone who trains in multiple disciplines or multiple modalities.
Okay.
So it can be, you look at the decathlon, the pentathlon, all of those, they're technically hybrid. If you're someone who, this never used to be a name for someone who liked to go lift in the gym and then run. But the sport of high rocks has really helped define hybrid, even though it's only one of the type of sports that hybrid is really, encapsulated.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah, but I would say it's the most dominant hybrid type of training, but it's not the only one, and it's been around for a very long time. People just don't honestly respect the term hybrid. You look at what's his name? Formerly Caitlyn Jenner. What's his name?
Bruce
Jenner.
Yeah.
He was like the pinnacle, the peak of the hybrid athlete.
Got it. Got it.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's so interesting is, and it's so great to catch up to you. Thanks for coming. We've known each other for so long.
So long, dude.
But what I found so interesting is I never really knew, for lack of a better word, what your passion was, what your angle was. I mean, I knew you were great at food, and that's how we met. We met here and over at Kenmar. So it's amazing to see sort of all that coming to light and what your real passions are, which I wanna hear about.
Yeah, for sure.
But take me a little bit to the background, because even though we know each other, we've actually never sort of had that background discussion. But Australia, father sort of taught the whole family to cook for survival reasons.
Yeah.
So just take me a little bit into that.
Yeah, it wasn't. I also want to quickly point out. I'm going to get there, but I do want to point out that when I first arrived in New York City, my friend who I was staying with, his name's Mark Robinson, used to take me down here, and we used to get a coffee, used to sit out there, and to the point that would be I couldn't afford much money or anything when I got here, but every Sunday I would treat myself to come outside. I'd read my book outside, and we'd be in this is the coffee shop.
Isn't that amazing?
This is crazy.
It's amazing.
So anyway, before that, so growing up in Australia, Sydney's northern beaches, I've always had I've been curious. I'm a curious person, a curious soul, and loved food. I loved having 2 brothers to try and be competitive in everything from the backyard rugby matches to who could eat the most spaghetti bolognese.
And how many brothers?
I've got 2. So
okay.
I'm the middle of 3. And I just side note, any parent who's concerned about the relationship of their boys or their girls when they grow up, it's you become closer when you move out of home. So if you've got that situation going on, just heads up, because my brothers and I are unbelievably close.
Are they still in Australia?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sydney, my younger one, he's Andrew. He's just moved. He just bought his home outside of a place called Ulladulla, which is about 4 hours south of Sydney, but it was in Sydney. And then Brendan, the older one, is in Melbourne, and he's been there for the past 5 or 6 years now. So, but yeah, so they just, we used to run amok. And Mum had 4 boys, when you consider Dad as well, to feed. And Dad then was one night, over course of weekly events, we'd watch this guy named Jamie Oliver cook.
Sure.
We'd be sitting down as a whole family, and this is around the age of 11 years old. And Dad was like, hang on. I realized that a very almost like solidaric moment in our week is when Brendan, Andrew, and Daniel watch Jamie because they're interested and they're curious. And Dad's always been a bit of a progressive individual when it comes to like teachings and learnings. So he then put together this timetable to teach us how to, be empowered to cook on our own accord. And so what started out being really average meals, and I say average, and that's a bit more lenient than it should be, turned out to be, standard, really decent home-cooked meals. And that did take time.
And that was from him, just him teaching you, or you all learned together?
No, not even. He just said, it's like, Dan, you're cooking Tuesday. And I had to be researching, looking up a recipe. He was there to teach in certain regard, but he kind of led us to our own devices. The couple of times I did cook with Dad, interestingly, he loves lemons. And we have a lemon tree in the backyard. And we used to make lemon meringue pie and Anzac biscuits, which is our version of like oatmeal cookies.
Okay.
And so like they're the only real times I ever cooked with Dad specifically early on. And then as time got on, it was like definitely a moment where I'd be talking to Dad about life or something, and he'd be giving me advice, and it'd always be over the stovetop when he's like, making a chicken masala or whatever. And Dad was interesting. Like he has all these newspaper clippings of recipes he pulled out from what's called the Sydney Morning Herald, or what we have in Australia known as the Delicious Magazine. And he very good at following recipes, but then he always add in extra garlic and all these little things. And it was really, really cool. So, but throughout that process, if you start at the age of 11 and you're doing it weekly, and sometimes, most of the time, I dibs the extra days of the week that I could, cook for the family because I loved it so much. By the age of about 13 or 14, these meals were decent. And so all Mum had to do was like, when I say all she had to do, but she just went and got the recipes, or the ingredients rather. And she had these meals on her table. And so,
Are you the only one who stuck with it, or your 2 brothers did as well?
I think my brothers
took it over
eventually. I definitely had more of a lean towards it than they did. They still appreciated it, but I think I was the one who gravitated towards the idea of cooking more consistently. And mind you, whenever I go home, my brothers, they love cooking. My younger brother, he was, at one point very much vegetarian, and, he was very good at cooking vegetable-based dishes. And my older brother is very curious as well. And so he makes his own things. Just, I think what's happened is I've followed a passion that I truly love and connected with. But it was interesting because it wasn't what I first pursued. It's like I've always loved sport. I've always loved being active. We were either playing rugby or down the beach, in the water. And so when I finished high school, it wasn't culinary that I pursued. It was my love for the understanding of the human body. And so I did an undergraduate degree at the University of Technology Sydney in exercise science. And then I did a postgraduate degree, a master's degree in exercise science, specializing in strength and conditioning and nutrition. So like I pretty much was following what I believed to be a passion, but also what I thought would be the biggest way I can impact society, because I just loved it so much. And so when I finished that master's degree, I got some internships with some professional rugby league, rugby union and football codes in Australia. And I was able to work my way into a position as an S&C. So I think from that, I learned how to deal with elite athletes, like not just teach them the skills, but interact with them and respect them, but also get them to feel validated and respect me, which was a huge thing at the time. I didn't realize that later on in life would be very valuable to me. But yeah, at the time it was a really, really just natural thing. But throughout all that, I'd still be cooking. And, this age I'm 20, 19, 20 years old. Right. So you can imagine it's like 9 years of cooking. And so I'd be cooking for my mates at home. I'd be cooking for friends on the weekend. And then these athletes who would walk into a nutrition office, nutritionist's office and get the lowdown what they need to be doing, but not understand them, I would be in the office and I'd understand exactly what the numbers the nutritionist want the athlete to go by. And the athlete just couldn't understand. So I just kind of interact and be like, okay, here's a recipe I've created for you. I want you to go and create this. It's exactly what you need to do based on what the...
And this is like 20 years old again, you're saying?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so they'd go do that. And what was really cool is not the takeaway of how they... in those years, we had very successful years on the field. And obviously there's many facets to that. Yeah. One of the biggest things, though, is how happy they were in the creativity away from the athlete side that the cooking allowed them to do. And so that was a really cool moment where, yes, they were the numbers, the blood work we were getting in response to this period of time was positive based on the cooking and across other factors, but they also adhered to it.
Yeah.
And so then they started to have competitions where they cook against each other in the club.
Oh, nice.
And so it was really, really fun. But after all that, I realized, okay, here's a cookbook I'm putting together. So I essentially self-published a cookbook.
Because we're going to talk about, you've done 3 at this point, but this is your first one that you did.
Yeah. So what have I done? I've done Dude Food, The Healthy Cook, Surfing the Menu, and now Eat Like a
4,
Legend.
okay.
Yeah.
Incredible,
There's 4. So, but yeah, like the first one I did, Dude Food, was a self-published cookbook and was there to empower the modern man from these experiences. And it sold really well.
So where did you get, I mean, you're young. I mean, you have the experience, you can back it up. But where did you get the, I don't know, I guess the confidence to just put this thing out there?
Dude, it's funny. It's like young naivety. Just like, I still think that this today, I was writing about this in my newsletter. It's like, there's some moments in life where it's not a question, and it's not a question based on, like, there's no fear, and you're just doing it. And you don't think about the consequences. It was like, I had to, back then, I was outlaying like $20,000 to put this book together, Australian dollars. So that's kind of like, what, $13,000 US. But to me, it's like, it wasn't like a shock. It was like, I'm doing this.
Right.
And so that's what I managed to do. I essentially was like, okay, well, if once you get this self-published book together, you have to then sell it. So the challenge was not for me to do it. It was more a case of like, who do I need to find to help me? And so one thing my dad taught me was always to, like, surround yourself with people that you want to learn advice from. And so I met this guy named Dale Beaumont, who's, sold many, many books. He's sold, over 20 books himself, these self-published, and he became a big mentor to me. And he essentially just said, Dan, this is what you need to do. And it was almost like a test. So when he first met me, he sat me down in his office, I remember, and he goes, okay, come back to me with all these things. And within 6 weeks, I came back, and you knew like that test was like, I'm going to give this kid these things. Yeah. And if he comes, most likely he won't come back. But I did come back. He's like, all right, good.
If you come back with 3 of them,
exactly. So, but yeah, I just learned, I learned, like, putting a book together is not too dissimilar from an assessment we do back in high school. You write some words, you put it together in a doc, you go off to get it printed, and then you just got to sell it. Right? Principle is then you got to have like a bit more marketing sav to you, so you got to understand who's the audience you're selling to, how are you going to sell it, and that's something I probably learnt myself is just through doing, like, these books. Each of them has an audience, and everything that I do today has an audience. You just got to figure how do you speak to said audience. Right. Really quickly, explanation is like when you're selling a cookbook that's called Dude Food, the audience isn't a guy. The audience is the grandma, the girlfriend, the mum, because they're looking for a book, or they're looking for something to buy their kid, their son, or whatever it is, right? So you go into the bookstore, it's like, hey, just want to let you know, I'm a local kid from the northern beaches of Sydney, so you go into these local bookstores, already like get some sort of empathy, and this book is perfect for anyone looking for a present for a young male. And
who's like going off to college or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He's got to survive on his own.
Exactly.
Got it.
So if anyone comes in here saying I'm looking for a book for a son or anything, you just go straight to this bookstore. And sure enough, we sold so many books.
That's
that
cool.
one method. And that led me to doing my next book called The Healthy Cook, a bit more in line with my healthy means, and that was also self-published. And then I realized I needed to jump into kitchens. I started getting a lot more media attention as this young guy cooking. I got on some shows like MasterChef Australia. And through that, I realized, okay, I need to become like more professional about my skill set.
Yeah.
Can't just be a home cook. And so that's when I started to jump into kitchens, and you start out being a dish boy, and then you work up prep, line cook, eventually sous, and then become a head and exec chef.
With and we don't talk too much about it, but with MasterChef Australia, give me a little bit of inside baseball, like something that, you know, what was that like?
Dude,
where you wouldn't know.
Okay, so from the audition process to when, from the audition process to when it was finished, at least when I got eliminated, it was 8 months.
Okay,
so that's a long time.
That's a long time.
And the one, Australia's MasterChef is different to a lot. I think a lot of them now define themselves by the same structure we had. You actually live in the house together.
Really?
So you go through like a 1 month audition phase or 1.5 month audition phase. Then you go from like 100, the top 100 down to the top 24. The top 24 go into the house. And you don't just film the cooking segments. You do all the behind the scenes and like all those little things. So you like,
but it's not really a drama thing. It's more.
No, it's all real.
Yeah,
it's all real. Yeah. And you know, I learned I learned in there. I think what I learned about that was each person is a character to an audience.
Right.
But I learned that my way of doing things was just to practice, and I was determined. And so when people would come home from some of the challenges, they'd go watch TV. I'd be reading cookbooks, and I wanted to get better.
Right.
And I just loved that so much. I was so into it.
I mean, what an experience. That's amazing.
Dude, I had one of the best experiences anyone could ever have. And, I speak to chefs all the time, and I say that single-handedly extended my knowledge and skill set then like worth around 4 years, because you had some of the best chefs you got exposed to. You were just living and breathing it. Your skills of your exposure to ask questions to people was it's just crazy. And so some chefs today ask me like, what was the turning point? I'd say that, because even before I became a professional chef, that was the impetus to give me a head start.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because one of the things that was on my mind, and I definitely want to hear about more the trajectory. But how do you keep learning? I mean, what do you in cooking? What do you do to keep learning, to keep pushing this out yourself?
Yeah, dude.
And where do you get that from? Is that from talking to other people? Is it just from doing? Is it?
Honestly, there's a couple ways. You can go eat at restaurants.
Right.
And one of the coolest
Not a bad way to go learn something.
Not a bad way at all. So you go in and you're like, my mates asked me, like, are you going to, like when we go to dinner, people who haven't done dinner with me before, they're like, when you go to dinner, do you like break down the food?
Right.
I'm like, not at all. Like in my head, I am.
But it's in your same thing for me. Not so much the food, but just the hospitality. You're always looking. Always looking.
Totally. Yeah. And so when you do that, you're like, I typically, when I eat food, I'm working out how the chef did this dish. So from like the way he plated it to like the different textures, maybe the charcoal or the tenderness of a certain protein or vegetable. You're always thinking about that kind of stuff. But through those means, you draw inspiration for sure. Then you read books, you listen to podcasts. It's like anything. And that's not just pertaining. I actually get more inspiration outside of the kitchen for food than I do in. And I think that's important for me, because if I get so drawn into just the plate, I get really almost like straitjacketed. I'm tied down for sure. So I draw a lot of inspiration from things I see or aromas I get in certain parts of the world, cultures. I love learning. I think that's the best part about being a chef, is you draw history from food.
Yeah.
Because you learn more about where food comes from, and then the reason the food was grown there, and how much of an impact it had on the development of a civilization. I think that's a marvelous
That's
thing.
interesting.
Yeah.
The more I talk to people who are really in the food business or real chefs, the more I appreciate that. I think it's really an act of self-expression, right? I guess an artist looks at a blank palette and has some idea where they're trying to get to. A photographer has a sense of what he's trying. So that's the sense I get, right, from all of these. And that's why I would come from outside the kitchen. And then, right?
Well, like the plate should express the story that is told by the chef. And so every chef's different. Yeah. Like where I come from in Australia is kind of unique for America. So like, okay, how do I then express like my history and my story and who I am? And that's what's really, really cool. That's what we did at the Osprey. It's like putting a modern Australian understanding of cooking into a restaurant that my front of house staff could then talk and appreciate to tell a different type of story that our patrons would never experience before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that brings up two things. One is when you came to America, I want to ask you about the culture shock.
Oh, yeah.
And what is tall poppy syndrome?
Oh,
I want to ask you about that. But also just the rise of Australian culture in the city, which when we actually first met was really starting to happen. So what do we say? It's about 10 years ago, right? In that window. And there was an influx of Australians, a lot of Australian brands, coffee culture. But you came over. What was the culture shock? What was the adjustment needed?
Man. So, I grew up watching so much American sporting movies that I felt like I knew America.
Like what? Give me an example.
Oh, dude, my favorite movie of all time is Remember the Titans. Everything like that. I love watching American Pie. All these, college-y kind of Van Wilder, Ryan Reynolds in that movie.
But that happens a lot. American culture is overseas is what people see
100%.
in movies. Yeah, that's so funny.
Same with Crocodile Dundee in Australia.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Which is not Australia, but I love it. I just got here and very quickly I registered how far away from home I was, and it was so good to me. It really, really was. Because I'd been not just in Australia, Australia's a big landmass. So I was in Sydney, but in Sydney, I didn't really go past the northern beaches. And in the northern beaches, there's only 4 different beaches I went to. And so I was sheltered. I was, I wasn't exposed to learning as much as I probably should have been, because I had a very easy life. It was, my parents were not well off by any means. But growing up by the beach, that is a tremendous opportunity that I'm so grateful for. But coming here, you learn more about the diversity of culture, different languages, because we just don't have that, the expectation on work, and also the how you look internally is okay to express truthfully to the world. So what I mean by that is, we'll lead into the second question you had. My first segment on GMA, I was asked, they listed out all these things that I had done at a young age as a chef. And to anybody that would objectively look at that, that is an incredible feat.
Right.
But instead of me owning that, my response to the question of her saying, you've done some incredible things at such a young age, I would just be like, oh, I just love cooking.
Yeah.
And that was a moment that taught me a lot, because afterwards the producers pulled me aside and go, Dan, you need to start taking yourself seriously. And I was like, what part of it did I not take seriously? And then I realized, I got spoken to afterwards, Australians aren't taught to own your success. In fact, tall poppy syndrome is something that is the opposite. You're taught to not think big of yourself.
Right.
So
I've heard that before.
Yeah. The idea behind tall poppies is you have these poppies that are in the field, and they're like flowers. And then every moment one of them would stick their flower would pop up.
Yeah.
And then they'd get hacked. So any moment you start thinking tall, big of yourself, you're brought back down. And that's having 2 brothers, that definitely helps the whole poppy syndrome, but they're so supportive now. And just even my mates, I admit, I go back to Australia, and it's slightly different now, but, early days, or 2 or 3 years ago, really hard for me to connect with my Australian mates, because a lot of them just want to give you shit for the success you've had, which I totally get it. It's part of my culture. It's like, oh, big shot, that kind of stuff. And reality is you go, well, I can't have a conversation with them anymore without them just putting me down. It's not being soft. It's like, I make a very big point to any Aussie who comes over here to look them in the face and go, you have done an incredible job. And it's okay to feel like you have done an incredible job.
Right.
And so that was probably the biggest culture shock, was learning it's okay to talk about your success. And the best example of someone doing that is when Roger Federer gives a post-match analysis of how he played well.
Interesting,
Because he's so good at saying, first set, the first set, third game, I wasn't really feeling my backhand at that point, but by the second set, really started to feel good. You saw my forehand down the line. It was a great shot. Just felt like I was really playing into myself. So, that's why I think I came away with a really good win. You listen to him, doesn't sound cocky, just sounds confident. and you look at him and say, that's a really nice way to respond to a question that someone actually answered you, as opposed to like palm it off and not think big of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because I've certainly done that in my life on most things. My natural reaction is, yeah, okay, it's just because also you don't want to be, I don't know if it's an egomaniac or whatever. So I've definitely done that, but I recognize that there's a balance of internally saying, no, I pulled something off.
Dude.
And I think people respond to that, which is what you were saying. Like, people don't know. They're waiting to see what your reaction. If you downplay it, okay, it's not that big of a deal. It's almost like asking for the price you need on something.
Totally.
Right? Ask for it.
Yes.
And I find people respond to that's the value.
Totally.
If you downplay it, well, that's what you're presenting. And people pick up on that value judgment,
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Americans are like, Americans are someone who teach you to own your success, as I said earlier. But to your point, at least the ones we come across in the city, very direct. Yeah. And with that, there's no bullshit.
No, exactly. And like, it's not mean.
No.
It's not, yeah.
No. If I ask you a question, I mean, what's your rate for something, and someone tells me their rate, I'm like, good for you. I'm not going to pay that, but good for you. Thank you for telling me. That's all it is. Right. And I find that really important. And there's no, I found that New Yorkers have this no time to bullshit kind of mentality, but it's really, really kind of refreshing, because in a world where I find it still a lot easier to someone be next to me, like if you and I are having a conversation, you hadn't met me before, and you asked me what do I do or like for a living, it'd be a lot easier if my friend was next to me and explained it.
Right.
Because if I said to you what I have, it's very still uncomfortable with me in expressing what I do, because reality is I've done a lot. Yeah. And so for me to stand here and say like I'm a chef, it's also not quite accurate, because like it's accurate to like 10% of what
you do a lot of things.
Right. And so it's not me, and then I've registered me doing that. If I just say I'm a chef and then all of a sudden things start to come out, it's almost like I'm insulting at the person in a way by like hiding how much I do and not trusting. It's like they don't feel trusted to me to share what I actually do, which I feel in return is like a really weird way of thinking about it. But to them, that's how I could be hurting their feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
So like when someone asks you the question, what you do or any of these things, I've just learned to kind of start owning that success a little bit.
Yeah. And, we were talking earlier about in the career, having those things where you realize they're taking up too much time. They're not really what I want to be doing right now. And in one way I've matured in my career, and it sounds like you have too, we were talking earlier, was being clear about those decisions. This is what I want to do. This is what I do. And I think those two things feed into each other. Sort of the confidence of making that decision and the confidence of being able to say, this is who I am, this is what I've done, this is what I'm standing on. I think they go hand in hand.
Without a doubt. I mean, early on, you have this wide net of, you are absolutely okay with being super wide in what you do.
Right.
Because you're probably learning a lot, you're loving it, you're getting opportunities. Like when I first came here, I was like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. Like, my brand and what I do crosses from, food into wellness, like specifically. So there's so many things that I could be doing in that. The problem with that is you don't get known for one thing. The other side is you may like things more than the others. The other side of that is the ones that pay the bills, maybe, the ones you don't like as much.
Right.
And so whilst that's really cool to think at first, as you get on your career, you really do understand what's important to you.
Yeah.
And the currency of happiness is the most, you still have to pay the bills, but the currency of happiness is one that you cannot by any means defy. I just spent a week in Austin, and I like every single day I filmed a new YouTube episode with a new athlete, and I called it work.
Right, right.
And that was unbelievable. I got to train with them. I got to teach them some aspects of applied nutrition that I study and work with, and then I got to go and jump in a sauna and a cold plunge every day.
Yeah.
And like that is something that I go, that makes me so happy. That makes me so happy. Versus like I love jumping into a kitchen. I love being that guy, but when I'm prepping, for a catering event and it's 500 people and I'm peeling prawns for 8 hours, it's not the best use of my time. And so that's when I'm like, narrow your focus.
Right. I'm finding the same thing. Then I wonder if you have the same experience. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, more than I have in the past 15 years of being in this business. And I think part of it is I define myself less by the business. So I get a sense from you that there's a different level of joy you're getting from what you're doing than the thing itself. Meaning, so let's say the YouTube thing didn't work out, or the book wasn't a success, whatever it was, I have a sense you'd still be happy because you've come to some place within yourself. And therefore you can the work becomes less tight. You can sort of let it go a little bit. And I'm finding, even though it's tough, we said everything's complicated, but I'm just enjoying it more and I'm taking more risks. And you find that as well as you sort of mature in your own career.
Yeah, bro. Tiger Woods had this word with his father when his father was teaching him golf growing up.
Yeah.
And the word was like the safe word. And the reason they had the safe word was because his dad would throw slurs at him when he was putting, or, throw things at him when he was off the tee to get him prepared for what would be the PGA, because, they've never seen anyone like this kid before. And so that word was called enough. So all he had to do was say that word and his dad would stop. But he never did. He never let the word enough come to, through his vocabulary.
He never said it.
He never said it. And so over the years, he, won 14 majors at a very early age. He was destined to be this guy. The problem that he had was underlying all this, the concept of enough was what is enough.
Mm.
And he was someone that you were like, wow, this guy has it all. He had everything he wanted, we from the outside would seem he had everything he wanted. He had problems with his marriage life. He has other things going on, and he's never really been back to where that was. But the concept I'm trying to make here is that knowing enough is enough. Like, what is enough for everybody? And I'm not saying that I'm not driven. I'm not saying that I'm complacent. I am someone who's realized along my journey, I want to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to the outcome that I'm looking to enjoy or achieve and be like, oh, I've got there, without actually, having the outcome is the 0.2 of a moment when you realize you've achieved your goal.
Yeah.
But the process is all the hours and days and weeks and years building up into that process.
But I think it takes time. People say that and you hear that, but I think for it to really be said with any authority, you have to go through the process.
You do.
You have to learn that.
You do.
It's very difficult to say, I want to be someone, enjoy the journey.
Yes.
I get it. It's a great sentiment. And that should be on your mind, but it doesn't go into your heart until you've gone through it, realized you haven't done that, and then you see what that means.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. You can really speak to that. There's also, the enough thing is great. There's a story, a person goes to a wise man and he's saying, how can you be so happy? You don't have this, you don't have this. And the wise man says, I have one thing you don't have. And the guy's like, what? What do you have? He says, enough. It's beautiful.
Crazy, man.
It's beautiful.
It's
right?
really, really cool.
Yeah. And I agree. It's not I'm ambitious. But it's coming from a different place. I think it's coming from a self-expression place.
Yes.
And not I need to get place.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. It's like, you're right. You have to go through the journey previously to realize. And like, perfect example of that is, there's this event called the Leadville 100, which is a 100-mile race in the Alps of the Colorado. Like, it's known as the race across the sky.
Okay.
You start at 10,000 feet in elevation, so you're already restricted in breathing, and you've got to do this 100-mile journey up and down incredibly technical terrain. I did that.
Wow.
So in 2023, I did my first attempt, and the whole time I'm like, I'm gonna come back. You have a time cap. You have to get under 30 hours. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get the goal of beating under 30 hours. I ended up rolling my ankle around mile 40.
Oh,
But my headspace was terrible. Like before that, I was just like, I was swearing. I was like, this is terrible. And I came back the next year, but my training was a lot different. I realized that I got to do this. A lot of people would pay to have the ability to do that race. I got to get up and train. I got to run the 100 miles a week because that is an absolute joy and privilege to be able to do. So my mindset had shifted. And so when I came back in 2024, rather than like look at every scratch of dirt with like negativity, I had realized that I was enjoying the process. I saw 2 incredible sunrises on that 29 hours. Nice. I climbed with some incredible new friends and old friends. And upon returning to the mountain and going back to, to the finish line, despite like how satisfying it was to get my redemption and come back with that, come back and get my, what they call the belt buckle, I had already won by every step that I had got was enough because I enjoyed the process. And that took me not enjoying the process to realize.
Beautiful.
And so taking that away from that and putting it into life right now, when opportunities come my way, as we were talking about earlier, I now think about, is that something I truly want to do? Are the people good people that I want to be around? Do I smile when I get to do it?
Right.
And that is so important.
Yeah.
So important. And that's the majority of the way I make my decisions now.
Yeah. How has your understanding or appreciation of mindset changed? I'm just thinking back, you're 20, back in Australia dealing with these athletes. Now, X years forward, you're dealing with elite athletes again. It must be interesting to see your own trajectory of your own mindset, but also dealing with these athletes who it's really all about mindset.
Yes.
How has your understanding changed in that world?
Yeah. So Dad's always been a very wise person, and I think he instilled a lot of those practices into me. I wouldn't say he like read books and does all that. He just always seemed to be that wise person. And so I definitely took a lot away from that. But when I was dealing with these athletes at the younger age, it was more of a challenge, I felt, to be that authoritative figure, despite the knowledge I had already, learnt. And dealing with the athletes then to now, it's incredible to see how much more open they are to the mental side of, that practice. So like back then, younger dude, knew a lot on the strength conditioning side, knew a lot on the nutrition side, despite like the other side of life that I still hadn't really experienced, but had a little bit more than the average person my age. That was kind of hard to connect with the athletes on. Now, I'm an authoritative figure and I'm a thought leader in this space. So it's a lot easier for me to communicate because I've also gone through it myself with them. But I think the mindset has evolved, or at least the exposure and resources we have to mindset has shifted over the years. I think stoicism has become even more prevalent to the average person. I'm seeing a lot more athletes just naturally within themselves, before they approach me, talk to me about stoic ways and the philosophers and the ancient philosophers they've seen over the years. So I think the biggest thing we've already raised, which is like enjoying the process, and I find that's why cooking is important and why I still get some of my athletes to cook, because it's really important you find play in a life with them. They are so stressed physically and mentally. They go into training. They go from training to recovery back to training. And a lot of the time we have these moments where even for the average person at home who's or at work, lunchtime is usually shoveling your face with food before going back to the desk.
Right.
And I say this with so much conviction. It's like, these are the moments that you are having the rest, the time, and lunch, dinner, whether to connect with your family, connect within yourself. It is so important that you just rest. And scientifically it's important. I'll get that in a second, but that's what I try and instill in these athletes. Is part of my job as this nutrition expert is to take them away from the stress.
Right.
It's like, yes, the food's going to be nutritionally viable, but it's meant to like get them relaxed, get them to enjoy that moment of time, because that reduces their cortisol. There's a reason why we call it the rest and digest state.
Nice.
Because when you're in your parasympathetic rested state, you actually have produced the right digestive enzymes to absorb more efficiently the nutrition you need to support your recovery as well. So, all in all, man, like I've really enjoyed over the years how we've had access to more resources and studies that have opened the accessibility to everybody, not just athletes, around mindset. And I really think, whether it be meditation directly or like I do when I, caramelize onions and just being in this state, like I really think there's moments in our day we need to really have a bit more intentionality behind it.
I was going to ask you, other than the physical, are there other things you do to maintain that balance? I mean, or is it really that moment you're working and that's your Zen moment?
Yeah.
Is that where you get that internal recharge from?
Yeah, definitely. I get it from a couple things. And I think a lot of people relate to running. Running's you get this euphoric feeling. You have a lot of endorphins going. So that's a great moment to themselves. That's why people should be okay with telling other individuals if they need that moment for themselves to run. When someone goes, "Can I go for a run with you?" And if you need to say no, that's fine. Like don't feel anything wrong with that. I definitely get it from cooking. So I like when I'm chopping or just like I'm in that moment myself, definitely. But every morning, I always say the best thing to do for your practices is, if you need to do something for yourself, you should do it at the start of the day.
Yeah.
Because as the day progresses, you're going to have a lot more distractions, responsibilities, and obligations pop up. It's easy for you to take away what is important to you as the first thing to make way for those obligations.
Yeah.
So do the things in the morning. So for example, I get up and I read every morning. And I
what are you reading? I said Ryan Holiday? Is that
I always read
right
Ryan.
yeah.
Milena bought me the best birthday present last year. She bought me all of Ryan Holiday's books signed.
Oh, wow.
But I'm also reading a book. Oh my God, it is by former 49ers incredible coach Bill Walsh. He's The Score Takes Care of Itself. Incredible book. Ironically, I talked about this in the newsletter yesterday as well. It's like, champions act like champions before they are champions.
Oh, nice.
And it's really, really cool. Like, and I don't think that's like an athletic thing. Yeah. It's always just like you notice someone who is dialed in before they are the person they want to be, because they act like who they want to be before it is.
It's like act like you've been there before.
100%,
sort of, yeah.
100%.
That's funny.
So I'm
I always love that line.
Oh, dude, really good. Really, really good. But yeah, man, so like I read every morning. And that's just a really cool moment for me to take a few passages of learning. But I'd say even more now that with the newsletter or my thought leadership, I'm applying the time that I have to play what I call offense, which is learn, instead of playing defense, which the team is now around me to support. They play defense for me, so I can play offense.
Great. It's a great spot to be. So let's dive into some of the stuff. I mean, you're doing so many things. You have this newsletter coming out. You give keynote talks. In general, what would you define your niche as? What is your thought leadership space?
Yeah, so like, first off, what do I do? I'm a performance chef and athlete who has a YouTube channel and newsletter that helps people with free resources around how they can improve their performance, right? Ultimately. I do very specific coaching to individuals on applied nutrition. So I do that. My YouTube, like I have a media team, which helps with the content, and I have partners. So partners like AG1, Center, Whoop, that, just to name a few, that support my message in the endeavors that I want to be going in as I support theirs. So for example, Whoop's a great one because I identify the data I get from not only my sleep, but my strain to help people understand how they can improve themselves. And so that's what I do on a weekly basis, is identify means to support resources that can improve other people's performance. And so this newsletter comes out every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. We have a weekly YouTube video where I'm interviewing athletes, training with them, and talking about the nutrition or showing the day in the life that I have in New York City that can inspire them to do the same.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what I do. And yeah, part of that means I get to fly to different places and talk about amazing new studies or speak in front of corporates
And what do people ask you to speak about? What kind of topics do you talk about?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ones. The main one would be like, how essentially creating habits around your nutrition is a big one, like applied nutrition, improving the hybrid athlete. So I do a lot of those in the performance corporate space. So you get like these big corporates who may have released a product that's in nutrition or something like that, and the whole team wants to learn how they can be a better hybrid athlete and how to eat to be a better hybrid athlete.
Right.
Whereas a lot of corporates want to learn how they can be more productive throughout their day and habits they can do to improve their nutrition specifically. And like a lot of these are, you know, multi-million-dollar CEOs who bring me on.
Yeah.
And my job is to like make it realistic for them because they've got children or they could be starting out as an associate right up to like being on the C-suite. And so you find different areas to relate to. So someone may have a home chef, but you should be and that's fine versus the person who's on, you know, 100K or 75K starting out.
Yeah.
So you got to find means to, you know, show different scenarios that people can actually do. So, and it's never like what I've learned from listening to speaking to being on the panels is too often I found people made these like unrealistic expectations. My thing is teach people to do something they're going to do for the rest of their life. Make it sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't instill habits that one, they have absolutely no intent of doing, but also don't make it unrealistic for them. Even if they will do it, they won't do it on a consistent basis.
Right.
And that's why they bring me in. Cause like I can speak, I've got the performance background, and I know the chef side.
Yeah. That's my weakness is I think about eating healthy, and I'll be honest, I get totally overwhelmed. First of all, I don't eat that much in general, which is horrible.
Yeah.
It's not on my mind a lot. And even what you were saying about the food, I don't like being rushed. So I rather just skip the lunch until there's really nothing else to do. Then I can enjoy it. It's horrible. I have horrible eating. Not that I eat that much junk food. I just don't eat a lot. Like yesterday, you know, I came into the city, I go to the cafe, I start working. I wasn't until 6 o'clock till I had, which is horrible. And I had a headache. It's really bad. So every once in a while I get into a rhythm, but I find it very overwhelming to find something like I can do consistently, cook on my own, simple, and also know how to filter out all the noise. Like, just do this. Just cook this. You know what I mean? Which I think is what you're speaking to, which is super useful.
Well,
so maybe I should sign up.
Well, yeah. No, I think the way to look at this is we talk about goal setting, and a lot of people say like, you know, if you really want that goal, think of you achieving it and how do you feel in that moment? Because if it's like absolute, you know, you're ecstatic, that is truly what you want. That's amazing. If it was like, you know, kind of surface level, you know, it's more of an external motivation rather than intrinsic. The problem that we need to do is do the same, but almost make you feel if you don't do it. It's very easy, as you just said, to like avoid something, just you know, push to the side because it's not a priority. And I can't tell you to make it a priority.
Right.
So I need to find ways to make it a priority in your eyes.
Yeah.
And the reality is the food's quite impulsive these days because we can order things last minute and relatively get them soon. We're not willing to plan ahead. And that's not say plan ahead by going groceries. My friend, she has a meeting just in Austin. She has her MBA class Monday, Tuesday night, every single week. But every single week she says, "Oh, I never have a chance to get food."
Yeah.
Because it starts at 6 p.m., finishes at 9:30. I'm like, okay, but every single week, you know
that's
what's going to happen. So you know consistently a thing, an obligation you have. She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, why don't you prepare something or order something knowing that you're going to have that every single week? And she's like,
that's a good idea.
I never thought of that.
I know.
And it's like, it's so easy for me to say that because in the moment, what if she's working up until 5:30 and hasn't had the plan to do so? So like you just, then you find out ways. But for you, my job would be tasked with, well, what's the downside that's going to motivate you to at least have a meal at some point?
Right.
You know, like my thing, honestly, is, and this is the biggest one, is I don't think you respect yourself enough.
Interesting.
You're not putting yourself first.
Right.
And it's so important to do that. You're willing to put your health and your loved ones aside because you're not going to give yourself enough energy to handle the situations better than when you're hungry.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that you don't know that in the moment. It's very easy.
Right.
And
it seems so reasonable in the moment when I'm getting stuff done.
100%. It's like me when I'm chefing and I have my team and we're in a rush and I have to teach them how to prep something and they screwed up the first 10 minutes, and the patience you have to be like, no, let them do it, make mistakes, because in the long run, they will know how to do it. But now it's frustrating because you have to put up with the consequences of them failing, and that's the only way they're going to learn.
Yeah.
Same thing for you is like, you feel in the short run, it's easy just to put it to the side. But the long run is the energy, the happiness for you, the sustenance. But it's again,
absolutely right.
It's a bit. I am, but like it's so much easier for me to say this now.
Right.
It's when you're in the moment that you're like, fuck, like, you know, we've got an overflow in the cafe. You know, kids going wild. I'm too far away from the store. It's like, you know, there's a lot of ways we can target that. But I think the biggest thing I'll leave with you on that note, because everyone else listening here will have the same thing, because they're all in the same boat, is simply that you don't put yourself first, and you have to. In those moments, it's, again, I don't have children, so it's very easy for me to say that. But even then, you have to put yourself first, because you then can't put everyone else around you in the best position forward.
I mean, it's great advice. I think it's right on. I think it's funny that there are, and this must be in everybody's life, there's areas where I do that. And there's certain areas where, for some reason, like you said, it's just not valued as well. You don't make that connection.
No.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So how are people interacting with you? DanChurchill.com.
Yeah, DanChurchill.com is the website.
They can sign up for the newsletter for free?
Yeah, it's a free newsletter.
Okay,
yeah, so
great.
sign up for the newsletter for free.
That's
Comes
amazing.
out every Tuesday.
And that has, and you said you have free recipes on your site.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's funny. It's like, it's good though, man. Like, it's funny. Someone's like, when are you going to get paid for some of this stuff? I'm like, I don't want to get paid for that stuff. Like, that stuff, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
So free recipes on the site. We've got all these resources. You can actually, once you sign up to the newsletter, you can go through all the past new ones. So it's you know, everything from like how to beat jet lag with with gut health. It's funny. We found out that through research, if you are someone who, we all travel, the best way to combat jet lag, or one of the best ways, other than get back into your sleep cycle as quickly as possible, is that having a healthy gut microbiome. It's feeding it probiotics is actually shown to be.
Do you take anything for that, or that's just natural food you use?
I mean, I do take, first and foremost, I always suggest whole foods first. Fermented veg, or, you know, anything from sauerkraut or things like that. But I take AG1 every single day.
You do, okay.
And so that's got your prebiotics, your probiotics, and your digestive enzymes. But I always say whole foods first, but the AG1 is just incredible.
A great supplement. Yeah. That's awesome.
So you got that. You got Instagram, Dan_Churchill. You got the YouTube channel, which is just my name. You can subscribe to that one. And but yeah, man, that's great. It's awesome.
That's great. You know, I actually love cooking.
You do?
I really do.
Awesome. Get you back there, man.
I got into it. It's funny. I like doing it for other people. I like doing it for the family. Yeah. Just like you said, I got into it because I was baking bread and used those the cast iron pots.
Yum.
And I was like, you know what? I like the idea of just this round thing. Like, this is the world. So I bought a cookbook of only recipes to make in that.
That's great.
And I loved it.
That's great.
And so I really enjoy it. I love when the family cooks together. It's exactly everything you're saying. That's one of my favorite things. If for some reason we're all just cooking together, I don't know why. It's like, it's just, as you said with your dad, everybody's focused. You're together. You're alone. You're talking. It's beautiful. I really enjoy the process, which is funny that I don't give myself the time to enjoy the food, but I really actually enjoy it.
It's crazy. Like, first off, the one pan thing is like, well, one of the biggest determinants or reasons why people don't like to cook is the washing up.
Right.
So if you can do the one pan's a game changer.
Right.
But yeah, like it's like everything. It's the same thing with advice. It's so much easier to give someone else advice, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
You know,
this is how you should live your life.
Exactly. I will say, like, every time I talk about food, nutrition, these are all, I live the practices I talk.
Yeah.
I do. I love it.
I
really do. But there's been many times in my life where, like, I've given someone advice on something else, and I'm going, but I'm not even doing that.
Yeah.
Hang on, I need to do that for myself. And so that's just a natural human reaction to things.
Yeah.
So now it's just a case of like, okay, well, what's going to intrinsically motivate me to instill the belief and the ability to create that habit around it.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
But yeah, man, like the one pan thing, it's a great start. It's a great start.
You can do a lot of that thing.
You can, man, especially a good cast iron.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make French toast, chicken wings, steak, pasta, nachos. It's great. I do a lot
That's
of
so
stuff.
good.
Funny question: favorite food movie?
Oh, dude, I reckon Chef or even Burnt.
Yeah, I was about
Chef
to
or
say,
Burnt,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
I can't. Burnt's sick. Like, and I must admit,
Burnt is Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
The way he was as a chef,
Yeah, that was a good movie.
It gave me PTSD because of some of the chefs I've had in the past. But dude, he crushed that movie.
Yeah, that was good.
Great movie.
But I love Chef. Chef is John Favreau.
Yeah,
I
dude,
love
great
that.
movie.
So good.
And like like that moment, I always love. Everyone's like. When everyone's like, you're doing R&D today? I'm like, yeah, what's R&D?
Right.
I'm like, you know that moment when John Favreau's in like Chef where he's got like all the core containers out and he's making all these sauces and stuff? It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that.
Great.
It's so much fun, man.
That's
What's
awesome.
yours?
I was going to say, I was asking because I think Chef is probably the one.
Yeah, cool.
Chef is probably the one. I just love the relationship with this kid. I
Yeah.
love that he finds the thing that he's going to do.
Yeah.
The guy comes back at the end, wants to partner with him.
Yeah, it's so good.
I love it. It's just wholesome.
There's another one as well. It's kind of gets a special mention. Is it's called the 100-Foot Journey.
Okay.
And it's about this Indian family in France who had a restaurant. I think it was, I can't remember where the restaurant was, whether it be India or something else. But they essentially arrive in this part of France where there's a 1-star Michelin restaurant across the way. They open up an Indian restaurant.
Yes.
It gets burnt down. Long story short, their young son or their son becomes this phenomenal chef. And the journey you see, his arc in development is incredible.
Is that the one where across the street, though, they're a little snooty about
it?
Yeah.
And then they become partners.
Right.
It's
no, that's a
beautiful.
great movie. And there's another one. And I don't. It's two guys, two famous comedians. They basically travel through Ireland, I think, stop in all these restaurants.
Oh, what's his name?
It's brilliant. But Coogan.
Yes. What's his name?
Barry Coogan.
The guy from Yes. Oh my God, he's so funny. Oh, I think that's his name.
I think it's Barry.
Yeah,
right?
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, that's brilliant. I love that one.
Yes,
I love that
great,
one. That's
great
awesome.
one.
This has been awesome, man. I mean, what's so special about talking to you is one, it's great to catch up. It's been a while.
Yeah, totally.
I'm so happy for everything that is going on with you, man. And to like come back, be in the old cafe where we met in this new chapter of my life and now a new chapter of your life.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you got to come in and do this.
No, dude,
man.
it was an absolute honor. It's like it was funny. Like you go through life and you things come back around, and I'm so grateful because like me reminding myself of where I started in New York, I was sitting just out there.
I love it.
And I remember like, you know, Mark Robinson was talking to me about, oh, this is like, you know, Hughes Cafe. And then I met you and I'm like, he's not an Australian. So like, this is great. Like, but it was just, you know, man, I think it's so important you have little check moments in your life. And I talk about why chefs sharpen knives. And I'll just finish on this because there's 3 points to sharpening a knife. You have the stone, you have the actual sharpening agent, and then you have the steel. The stone you do once every, 3 months. It helps sets the edge. All right. Then you refine the edge by sharpening and you finish with the buff and the polish. Each one is done, more consistently as you go up that scale. So the buff you would do every single time you're cooking, the sharpen maybe once a week, and the stone once a month. The reason why I say that is like me coming back here is like having the most unbelievable stone moment every single time. Just to see progression and even for yourself, man.
Thank you, man.
Congrats on the next one over. Like I remember you talking about that for a long time too. So that's awesome to see.
Like I said, we're having
3 years,
fun.
4 years.
Oh, we'll be next door?
Yeah.
5 years. I mean, we opened August of COVID.
Wow, dude. That is crazy.
I know. Time flies, man. But this has been great. You're a legend, man. What's the name of the latest cookbook?
Eat Like a Legend.
Eat Like a Legend.
Yeah.
You are a legend. Thank you,
Appreciate
brother.
you, man.
Great, man. Thank you.
Thanks, dude.